this is Peter from allinclusivecaribbeancruises.net and PetesTravel.com. Welcome. Let me talk to you a little bit about Caribbean cruises from Port Canaveral. If you're familiar with the area, you will know that Port Canaveral is it's about 50 miles or so east of the Orlando area. Orlando, which is very popular for Walt Disney and many other popular attractions. It's, as a matter of fact, it's the most the most visited. Get my words together. The most visited area in Florida in terms of tourists. So Port Canaveral is it's about 50 miles if you are driving from Orlando. So people who are looking to cruise from Port Canaveral will fly into Orlando because it's a more popular airport, and you have more direct flights to Orlando. But you also have a closer airport to Port Canaveral, which is actually the Melbourne airport. So if you can't find a flight into Melbourne, it's a shorter drive from Melbourne to Port Canaveral, and therefore you'll spend less money in terms of the transfer cost. But Port Canaveral is very popular. As I mentioned earlier, it's close to Orlando, and which is the home of Walt Disney, and so as you can imagine, it is somewhat the home port for Disney cruises, or the longer Disney cruises, because Disney sails from Port Canaveral, but from other places as well, like Miami and even from New York. So, but Port Canaveral is where it actually provides longer itineraries, 7-day cruises to the Caribbean. So you will find Disney cruises from Port Canaveral, but in addition to Disney, you will find Royal Caribbean and Carnival cruises, and you may also be lucky to find some Norwegian sailings out of Port Canaveral. In terms of cruise length, you'll find a limited number of, say, 4-day cruises, mostly with Royal Caribbean, and then some 5-day cruises with Carnival. And these cruises these shorter cruises go mostly to the Bahamas. So you will find a 5-day Carnival cruise going to maybe 2 stops in the Bahamas, Freeport and Nassau, or it may include the private Bahamian island, and each of the cruise lines has a private Bahamian island. So your shorter cruises will definitely go to the Bahamas, or to, say, Bahamas and the stop in Mexico. So maybe Cozumel and Nassau, something like that. Whereas you have longer cruises, and all the cruise lines I mentioned, Disney, Carnival, Royal Caribbean, they offer 7-day cruises from Port Canaveral to the Eastern and the Western Caribbean. You may even find some sailings to the Southern Caribbean. When we talk about Southern, we're thinking of the Dutch islands in the Southern Caribbean, Aruba and Curacao. None of them actually sails to Bonaire, but Curacao and Aruba are included in itineraries to the Southern Caribbean. You will find like an 8-day cruise with Carnival, or I've even seen where they have I think a 9-day cruise going to the Southern Caribbean. So in terms of cruise sailings out of Port Canaveral, there are several to choose from. Carnival has cruises all year long from Port Canaveral. Disney has cruises all year long, and also Royal Caribbean. But you'll need to check to see what the length of each cruise will be. But mostly the cruises from Port Canaveral are 7 days, 8 days, and maybe a limited number of 9 days with Carnival. As I mentioned before, the cruises will take you to the Eastern Caribbean. So we're talking about San Juan, Puerto Rico. We're talking about maybe St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands, or St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands, or St. Martin, and we're also talking about cruises to the Western Caribbean. You have stops that will include Grand Cayman, Cozumel, Costa Maya, Belize City, a stop in Honduras. There are cruises that include stops in Ocho Rios, Jamaica, and Falmouth, Jamaica. So there's a nice mix of ports of call, and a nice mix of the length, in terms of the length of the cruise, that you will find from Port Canaveral. Like I said, the port is actually about 50 miles from Orlando. I mentioned that earlier, and so it's if you're booking your cruise separate from your airfare, then you need to consider transferring from Orlando to Port Canaveral. That is if you're flying into Orlando. Same thing applies if you're flying to Melbourne. Melbourne is a shorter distance from the port, the cruise port, so you pay less. If you want to go the way of getting a combo deal where the cruise fare is added to your airfare and the transfer, you can do that. It could cost more than if you were to do it on your own, but the good thing is that it saves you the headache of trying to come up with paying for additional for a transfer from the airport to the cruise port. But of course, you can talk with your travel agent. Your travel agent will be able to assist you with all that, and will make it as smooth as possible for you. The travel agent will give you the options available, and I'm sure at the minimal cost available. So check with your travel agent, and look forward to a smooth sailing in terms of booking. But the bottom line is, there are many cruises out of Port Canaveral, and cruises going to places that you will love. So if you live in, say, Georgia, or you live in Florida, northern Florida, or even South Carolina, Tennessee, those are not too far in terms of distance driving to the cruise port in Port Canaveral. We live in McDonough, Georgia, which is about 30 miles south of the Atlanta airport, and we have driven to Port Canaveral twice for cruises out of Port Canaveral. It took us about 7.5 hours to get there, so it wasn't a bad ride. Actually, for every cruise that we do out of Florida, we drive, because it saves quite a bit on airfare for 5 people. But anyway, there you have it. You have many choices when it comes to cruising from Port Canaveral, and I hope that you will book your next cruise from there. It should be fun. Some people actually do a shorter cruise and then spend a few days in the Orlando area, you know, to visit one of the attractions or 2 of the major attractions there. So it's up to you what you do, but whatever you do, go have fun. This is Peter from All Inclusive Caribbean Cruises and the PetesCruises-n-Travel.com saying, see you on the high seas. Bye.